Hello and welcome to Pod with me. My name is Colin and this is a channel where I take around bits of London and tell you a little bit about their history. Now, there's a lot of noise around just at this point. I'm up on Westminster Bridge. No shortage of people playing music on their tricycles as they cart people around. So if it interferes with the video too much and it might lead to a YouTube strike, I'll have to chop out the music. Oh, here we go. So when I upload this, it's going to be Remembrance Sunday, so I thought it might be apt if we looked at some things relating to the services and the armed forces. So we're going to have a walk along Embankment up by Westminster where the Ministry of Defence is, and I'll warn you now, there's going to be a lot of statues and that sort of thing. And there goes Big Ben. Okay, now I thought we would start with someone a bit older who defended the country, and that is this lady. So this is Boudica. She was queen of what's known as the Iceni tribe. So what happened was the Romans came over here in about the year 43, and what they would do whenever they took over a country is, obviously they would demand that the ones that were defeated would pay extra taxes and that sort of thing. But as I say, no shortage of idiots polluting the airwaves. Anyway, so as I was saying, what the Romans would do whenever they conquered a country, they would demand extra taxes from whatever places they conquered. But rather than having to have a standing army controlling the population, they would basically get the local dignitaries, the ones in charge, and they would show them the benefits of the Roman lifestyle, how they could still be in charge and still have a privileged life. But all they had to do is, pay a bit more and pay a bit of deference to the Roman rulers. And Boudica was the wife of the king of the Iceni tribe. And what happened was in the year he must have died around about the year 60, and he had left in his will that half his kingdom, which was up in the northeast of London, it was up near Norfolk and Suffolk and whatnot, half his kingdom would go to his daughters and half would go to the Roman emperor. But the local Romans didn't honour that, and they basically took his land. And when his wife Boudica complained and acted up, they basically flogged her and then raped her daughters, which turned out to be a very, very big mistake. So what happened then was, I don't know if she planned it this way, but a lot of the Roman army was off in other parts of the country, quelling other tribes around the country, and she raised a huge army, and she came to London and she trashed it, absolutely burnt it to the ground. Killed thousands of people. So there would have been the Romans that would have been killed, but also, this is good. Here we go. Let me get through here. But as well as the Romans, they killed a lot of people that they would have seen as collaborators. So a lot of Britons died as well, but it was thousands of them. And then she also trashed Colchester, burnt that to the ground. And this led to, the Romans ended up building a defensive wall. But once they'd had those successes, I'll just help them. Once they'd had those successes, one of the Roman generals, a guy called Suetonius, he marched back and then had a big battle with the Iceni tribe. Even though the Romans were well outnumbered, such was their technique and their proficiency in battle, that they ended up defeating Boudica, and I think she is supposed to have committed suicide. Well, I have to say, when I was a kid, her name was, they pronounced it Boadicea. But then the linguists got involved and informed us all that actually we've been saying it wrong for hundreds of years and it should have been Boudica. So this is her statue, which is pretty cool, with the horses. Don't know if you can see, but it's got the big spears on the side of the wheels, a bit like Ben-Hur. So she would have been one of the first defenders of the country. just while we're here, I thought I would mention another form of defence of the country. Look at these red brick buildings. Back in, I think it was 1890 to 1906, this was where New Scotland Yard was. So we've had 4 locations for New Scotland Yard. That's where the Metropolitan Police Headquarters is. And we've had about 4 locations since it was first formed. The big building over here on the left, the big brown one there, which you can see just to the right of Big Ben as you're looking, that is Portcullis House. So that basically houses the overflow of MPs. There's not, in the Palace of Westminster, otherwise known as the Houses of Parliament, where Big Ben is there, there's about 650 MPs, members of Parliament, not enough room for them all. So there's other sort of overflow buildings, and this one, Portcullis House, was just built in, I think it was around about 2004 it was finished. Obviously cost a lot more money than they thought it would, always does. But it houses about 213 MPs and their staff. And there is an underground passage from the house over to the Houses of Parliament. So that, unlike me, they don't have to fight their way through tourists if they want to get across the road. So it's turned out to be a nice day. All week I've been checking the weather forecast. At the start of the week it was saying it was going to absolutely be chucking it down. It was rain, and with each passing day it seemed to get a little bit better. If we look across the way, don't know if you can see the big lettering above the brown sort of lip there. Yeah. That tells you that that is now New Scotland Yard. So as I say, headquarters of the Metropolitan Police. Hence the numerous police vans parked outside. Oh, I don't believe it. We appear to have a protest outside the MOD. So much for today's video. Well, while we're here, there's the London Eye. Alright, let me see if I can save this at all. Maybe we can get some of the statues, if not all of them. Now, this has got to be one of the coolest statues in London, I think. This is for the Battle of Britain. Now, for those of you that don't know, during World War II, we had what was known as the Battle of Britain, which was basically an air fight. So, from July 10th, 1941, until the 31st of October, the Germans were planning to invade Britain with an operation called Operation Sea Lion. And what they needed as part of that invasion, they needed to be able to have dominance of the air. So that they could, protect their forces whenever they were getting dropped off on the boats and landing in England. And so there was an ongoing air battle for almost 4 months, and that was known as the Battle of Britain. And it ended up we won, which is why probably we don't speak German now. Now the thing is, when I say we won, it's not like we defeated the Germans in that battle, so much as British forces didn't get defeated, because they were able to stay as a functional force that could inflict damage on the Germans should they attack. The Germans called off the Operation Sea Lion and concentrated elsewhere. So, as I say, not so much a victory as avoiding defeat, but it was crucial was that allowed basically Britain to become a sort of landing pad for the European invasion in 1944. And that's why you have this very famous quote here on the wall from Winston Churchill. And it says, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." And that was Churchill. And one of the few was basically the pilots and the support staff on the ground. You know, because they were able to get the planes back up. Even then the planes had been damaged in airfights, dogfights as they were called. The mechanics were able to repair them and get them back up basically the next day in a lot of cases. And obviously you had the women who were making the munitions and were also helping out with operational stuff happening as well. It was very much a joint effort. So this is the statue, and there you can see there is St. Paul's. There is various people, soldiers and the like, sort of in the middle of wreckage and clearing out bombs and all the rest of it. And meanwhile, very British thing. Meanwhile, someone is making tea. Looks like for the army boys, or for the RAF guys, and sitting there. Maybe have even just been at home. Very British thing to do. Make tea. Someone sitting in a gas mask. I don't know how they're going to drink it with a gas mask on. But there you go. And what I love about this memorial is that it's 3D, as you can see. There you go. There's the women making the munitions and building the aircraft. There's the guys sort of flying, the planes flying. There would have been the soldiers doing the anti-aircraft stuff, and you see the shells in their hands. The thing, apart from the fact that British forces, and I should say Commonwealth forces, the guy who was the top pilot of the time was actually a Czech pilot who was flying in a Polish air squadron, and he was the top pilot for the British during the Battle of Britain. And but one of the things you need to be aware of is A, the Germans have a lot more planes, and B, I saw a documentary where someone was showing you the different sizes of the shells that they were using. Now, the Messerschmitts and some of the other German planes that they were using to fight with the British planes, they were using shells like bullets for if it was a gun. That were like cannon shells. These things were bleeding enormous, and they would leave huge big holes in the planes, never mind if they hit a person. They were like, they were huge. And about a tenth of the size was the British shells, which were, more like rifle bullets. They were like pea shooters by comparison. So not only were they outnumbered in terms of numbers, and in terms of the quality of the material they had to fight with, it was just a huge endeavour. So that's why it makes it all the more heroic. And like I say, I think this is one of the coolest statues in London, if not the coolest. And I can remember as a kid going to see the Battle of Britain movie with Michael Caine and Christopher Plummer and numerous others. And there you go, Battle of Britain, 10th of July, 31st of October 1940. I'll leave that there in case any of you want to pause and read it all. Alright, now, let's see if we can get across and see if I can get to see some other statues without getting too close to the various people shouting. I had hoped to show you all the statues in this building, but obviously that's not going to happen. Alright, let's see if we can get across. Alrighty. Hello, can I get in round that way? Can I go in round that way?
Yeah, by all means.
Yep,
Yeah.
thank you.
No problem at all.
Right, so as I say, there were some statues up that way I was hoping to show you, but obviously don't want to get in the way of the various protests. So this is a memorial to the Korean War, 1950 to 53, and I believe it was the South Korean government that dedicated this. I think it was only about 20 years ago or so, but it was for the people, obviously, of Britain that fought in the Korean War, and it's very often seen as the forgotten war. So this is that memorial, and as I say, the big building behind it is the Ministry of Defence, which would be the closest thing, I suppose. If you're America, you'd be thinking the Pentagon. Well, this is our version. There's a plaque up here. Let's see what it says. Oh, it's just giving the details of who it was that sort of brought the plaque over. You know, sort of President of the Republic of Korea. Okay, so now you can see lots of wreaths. Poppies. I've got my little lapel badge poppy on, and next Sunday, whenever you're seeing this, there will be a very large parade to the cenotaph, which I'm hoping we'll get to see today, and you'll see all the poppy wreaths and whatnot being laid there. So the poppies became a symbol of the people who had fallen after World War I. Obviously the blood red, and apparently in the French fields, like at the Somme and places like that, there was sort of poppies that, you know, would grow up even after the place had been blasted, almost like a hellscape. Whenever plants started growing, poppies and the like that would appear, and obviously the blood red was very significant. So traditionally, especially around this time of year, poppies get laid. Lots of people buy poppies, and that is to support various service personnel who might need, you know, sort of anything from treatment for PTSD, or they might, you know, have other homelessness, mental health, physical, you know, ailments that need treatment that maybe they can't get so quickly under the NHS. And so there's the British Legion, as a charity, collects every year by selling poppies that people can wear. The trouble is, generally with the poppies, they give you a little pin, and over the years, I can't count the amount of them I've lost because they keep falling off. So a couple of years ago, I got my little metal one, and I pinned that on my coat, and then all I do each year is then chuck the money in the collection thing without taking the poppy ones. Although this morning, I did grab one just to show you. Mind you, why am I showing you this? Because you can see them all on the ground. That's alright, can't find it. It's in my pocket somewhere. Right, so it says here, United Nations, the Korean War was the first UN action against aggression. The UN forces that fought the North Korean invasion were drawn from 21 countries. Although exhausted and impoverished after the Second World War, Britain responded immediately by providing strong naval, army and air forces, and became the second largest contributor after the United States. There you go. A distant obligation honourably discharged. Now, given that it was 1950, we were still under rationing then, so yeah, we were impoverished. That was a tough time. So this statue, I'll just lift that up a bit, this is to the Fleet Air Arm. Now the Fleet Air Arm is basically the Royal Naval's air arm. So if you think of like aircraft carriers or ships that are big enough to carry helicopter pilots and that sort of thing, helicopters. So anything that relating to aviation, but as from ships and boats and that sort of thing. And this is dedicated to those people that have fallen in service as part of that side of the forces. So this statue is apparently known as Daedalus or Daedalus, depending on you want to pronounce it. And I do like it as well. So if you don't know the legend, basically the legend goes it was Greek, and it was Daedalus and his son Icarus had been imprisoned by the king Minos. Daedalus was a great inventor, like a really master inventor, probably one of the greats of all time. And to escape the prison, he developed these wings using feathers and wax. And he made 2 pairs, one for him and one for his son Icarus. And the idea was that they would fly out of the prison, which they duly did. But he had warned his son, don't get too close to the sun, because otherwise, it would melt. And unfortunately, the son, being a bit young and headstrong, as all children are, ignored him, and his feathers duly did. The wax melted, and the feathers fell apart, and he fell into the sea and drowned. So that's the legend, and so this has been named informally as Daedalus or Daedalus. And I think it's got a list of the campaigns on the sides here. Yeah, Crete, Bismarck, Sicily, Salerno, a lot of stuff there. Second World War, and then Korea, and then the Falklands, and then Kuwait. Again, here's, well, let me just bring that down for you. In case you can't see it, it's a little bit dirty. To the everlasting memory of all the men and women from the United Kingdom, the British Commonwealth, and the many allied nations who have given their lives while serving in the Royal Naval Air Force, the Air Fleet Arm, or as the Air Fleet Arm is covered up. And then a bit of poetry. He rode upon a cherub and did fly, yea, he did upon the wings of the wind. Okay, and as you can see, more poppies. And trust me, by next weekend there will be bucket loads. Alright, now let me see. Oh, hold on, that's the wrong way. And there's some more campaigns. So Dardanelles, Jutland, River Plate, Norway, a lot of that's World War II. In fact, everything there is pretty much World War II apart from the initial one. Initial few, sorry, which would have been the First World War. So as I say, Royal Naval Air Force or Air Arm. This guy, it says it's Lord Portal of Hungerford. I can't say I know a huge lot. I know he was, I think he was responsible for the RAF during World War II. Certainly from about 40 to 45, and he was one of the top dogs. And he is described as being one of the architects of victory. So I can't say he's a name that trips off the tongue. There's lots of people that we've heard of. It'll be household names like Montgomery and whatnot, even Allenbrook, a lot of people might have heard of. But Lord Portal, I would say, isn't exactly one of them. But that's okay. I'm sure he did his bit, hence getting the nice statue. Now, there is another statue across the way. So I'm going to dip over and see if we can see that one. Afternoon. Now this statue was basically dedicated to the RAF, but it was up around about 1920, because it was after the First World War that this was, because obviously then they didn't know that there was going to be a Second World War. So this was to the RAF, and it says there along it, in memory of all ranks of the Royal Naval Air Service, Royal Flying Corps, Royal Air Force, and those air forces from every part of the British Empire who gave their lives in winning victory for the King and country, 1914 to 18. And that says, I bear you on eagle's wings and brought you unto myself. And then underneath there's a description that's added, obviously after the Second World War, this inscription is added in remembrance of those men and women of the air forces of every part of the British Commonwealth and Empire who gave their lives 1939 to 45. So this has now gone on, basically for the RAF, for all the conflicts, all the lost lives from any conflict. This is now seen as the sort of the generic RAF statue to all of them, even though initially it was mainly for the First World War. Now we're going to go back into the MOD. Oh, looks like the protesters are all napping off. I hope they're not going around the Whitehall, because that's where I'm hoping to go. Right. I'll walk on the grass. Let's see now. So this one says Charles G. Gordon, Major General, Royal Engineers, killed at Khartoum, which is in the Sudan, on the 26th of January 1885. So Gordon, he used to be known as Chinese Gordon because of his the work that he did in the sort of Chinese uprisings and whatnot whenever we had some territory out that way. But then he went off to do this. I think he was sent in to relieve Khartoum and get people out, and that was it. But he ended up trying to defend it against a huge Muslim force, and that's what ended up getting him killed. But he was a bit of a household name, at the time, a huge hero, especially when he died. And there's actually a rather good movie, at least I think it's good, Charlton Heston, and it's just called Khartoum. You ever get a chance, give it a watch. It does tell the story of what happened. I don't know how historically accurate it is, but I think it gets the general themes. And like I say, it tells the story of Gordon and his death. But like I say, he was a hero. After he died, there was a subscription sort of made for a school in his honour, which is still around today. And the school, once a year in January, I believe, they have a band complete with pipers and kilts and bagpipes, the whole, pipers, bagpipes, the whole thing, and they come up once a year in January, march up a lot of the school kids, and they basically, come up to this monument, and just to show respect for the school that it's named after. He also has he had one other slightly more unfortunate place named after him. I was reading about him. There's a website called London Remembers, and they pointed out that at Queen Victoria's suggestion, a hospital was named after him. Now, this hospital had been named the Western Hospital for Fistulas, Piles and other diseases of the rectum. Now, you would have thought that whenever they were going to rename it after him, they might have changed the name a bit more, was sort of not quite so blatant, not explicit about what it was for. But no, it was renamed the Gordon Hospital for Fistulas, Piles and other diseases of the rectum. You thought they might have just stopped at Gordon Hospital, but alas. Now, I'm not going to go back up, do the other bits, because I want to go around this way and show you some stuff around Whitehall. So maybe we'll do those other statues another time. So you can see nice sort of open green space, and this is one of those spaces I was saying in one of my other videos. London has 3,000 open spaces, or a mixture of open spaces, green spaces, parks, all that sort of thing. And this would be one of them. And since we're hoping to document as many of them as we can before I keel over, there you go. I have to say, this one's just outside. This is at the back of the Ministry of Defence. And I'm guessing, since there is a fence around that building there, this is technically outside of it. Yeah. Actually tells us a little bit about it here. Victoria Embankment Gardens, Whitehall Extension. Alrighty. That's alright. I will maybe make a little short out of this. Okay.
It looks like it's going to start to rain soon. Yeah, I can smell it.
So this will lead us around to Whitehall, where hopefully we don't have any protests. But I do see one statue on the right I want to talk about. I'll try and get across to that. The statue on the left here, there's two of these above the doorway into one of the entrances of the MOD, and they are called Earth and Water. Apparently they wanted to do fire and air as well, but they cost so much they didn't get around to it. If you see them, each of those statues up there weighs 40 tons. Apparently the workers just in the offices just refer to them as the two fat ladies. Alright, let's go over here. Now, this statue is of one of the badasses that helps out the British Army. And it just says the Gurkha soldier. So the Gurkhas are Nepalese soldiers, very highly trained. The British, they had a campaign against them, I think it was a couple hundred years ago, and they got such a hard time and such a pasting that they ended up basically making friends with them and then learning some of their techniques. And they have worked with the British Army for the last 200 years. But they are known as being like exceedingly deadly, very capable soldiers. And their signature sort of weapon is the kukri, which is that, see it there, the carved knife. Apparently it's about 18 inches long. And it says, the Gurkha soldier, bravest of the brave, most generous of the generous, never had country more faithful friends. Thank you. So they are very well regarded, despite the fact that we didn't always pay them that well, which is fairly typical of, MOD, and once bureaucrats get in the way of things. So it's just got the various names as the kings and queens have sort of died and been replaced, or is it the names of the regiments, I think, like Royal Gurkha Rifles, Royal Queen's Gurkha Engineers, but there's also the Prince of Wales on Gurkha Rifles. So all the various regiments, I would imagine, and then a lot of the campaigns. So nobody did a lot of work in Burma and during the Second World War, but obviously, like I said, they've been fighting with us for 200 years. Indian Mutiny, Bhutan, the Malay States, First Sikh War, Northeastern Frontier, Burma, Kurdistan, Java, well, yeah, everything. Okay. Now we're not going to do horse guards and all that, because we'll do that when we do a Whitehall walk, when I'm pretty confident there's no protests. That's the trouble these days, there always seems to be protests every weekend when I'm up. I thought I'd be safe enough behind the MOD, but obviously not. You can see the horse guards, household cavalry under the arches there. As I say, we'll do that another time.
And the fact that I have to send a whole month is really even worse.
Well, looks like more protesters, so we might have to dodge the statues here, so maybe I'll do those ones when I do Whitehall, but I will show you the cenotaph. Yeah, so basically there's three statues here, but I won't go into details. You got Slim on the left here, Field Marshal the background, Slim, and then you have Alan Brooke, and then the one where they're all standing around him is Montgomery. The last two are both their parents were all from the north of Ireland. So if you want good generals, get the Irish involved. As was Wellington, for that matter. He was of Irish stock. Alright, let me see. Okay. So I'm going to try the other opposite side from the protesters. Alright, this statue, it's a relatively recent one, I think in the last 10 or 15 years, but this, as it says, is dedicated to the women of World War II, who for the most part, but not totally, but for the most part, would have been, the behind the scenes, doing the, helping in the logistics stuff, but also working in the factories and in the fields, doing the food, all the stuff that you need. Because it's all very well having the armies, but if you don't have people giving you the supplies and keeping the population eating, then you're a bit stuffed. So this is recognising their impact. Obviously, traditionally, it's always been statues towards the various battles, which for the most part, especially in times gone by, would have all been men. But this is obviously recognising the part that the women play. So this is the most revered monument to the fallen in various wars. This is the cenotaph. So every year, oh my camera's going a bit funny, come on. So every year, around about Remembrance Day, the closest Sunday to it, it would seem. Remembrance Day is 11th of November because the war finished 1918 on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. And there is always a big parade and they lay wreaths and whatnot at the cenotaph in remembrance of the fallen. So you will get people, the ones who are still with us that still fought World War II, and not until not that long ago, certainly well within my lifetime, people who fought in World War I will come and parade here in commemoration of the fallen comrades. But there will be, the king will be here, there'll be various, officers of state, lots of generals and whatnot. And next Sunday, they're all going to be here doing the parade and laying wreaths. So the cenotaph itself, there was an initial one designed around about 1919, and then this one was sort of modified, and this one was put down in 1920, I think it was. Designed by a guy called Edward Lutyens, and it's made of what's called Portland stone, so I think that means it's basically very hard wearing, the particular brand of stone. And the cenotaph is a Greek word meaning empty tomb. So there's no sort of battles or wars or whatever mentioned on the side, because it's supposed to be representative of all the fallen, not a specific event. After the First World War, you would get people who would do Remembrance Day at sort of local memorials in the towns and villages around the country. But from after the Second World War, they started this annual big parade. So as I say, it will be all here the day that I upload this, if you are a watcher of BBC World Service or BBC if you're in the UK, then it will be on the telly.